Okay, it's the end of the session. If the camera shakes a little bit, it's because Frankie the pug keeps on jumping up in the chair that's holding my tripod. This is Bear, Frankie is the pug, and then we have Loki, what is he again?
Keysound.
A Keysound. There we go. And he is getting really rambunctious because he wants to go and do what he wants to do. I'm not restraining, well, I'm restraining him a little bit. I just have my finger around his collar because it looks better to have the dog that I worked with in the shot. And yes, he wants to get the treats that he's sitting on right now in my treat pouch. This is the roadmap to success. And basically, we primarily worked with him. Now, I showed the guardians how to put him into a sit. And remember, when you're using that, you always keep the treat within an inch or two of his nose. Now, the guardian at one point had a really jerky sort of movement. We're going to keep it a fluid movement as if we're underwater. And we're going to keep it within an inch of his nose. So go in an arc like this over his head. And as soon as he sits, pop in his mouth and say the word sit. Now, after a while, after I rep this a bunch, I was just holding a treat up here when he was standing. And he just looked at it. And I didn't give him any commands. And the guardians kept on saying sit, but he does not know sit yet. If your dog doesn't know the command, you don't use the command word to tell it as a command. You use it during the reward stage only. So I'd hold it up here. As soon as he sits, within 3 seconds, I pop the treat in his mouth and say the word sit. Remember, anytime you use a treat, they should hear the command word immediately after the treat goes in their mouth. And with dogs, you have a window of 3 seconds to correct or reward them for them to have the ability to make the connection. But it has to be repeated enough times in a row where it's consistent, where that's say, oh, every time I sit, my butt's on the floor, and I'm getting a treat, and I hear the word sit. Eventually, we could say sit, they put their butt on the floor, anticipating getting the treat. Now, if I forget, I'm gonna try to remember to link a video on how to teach your dog to sit, lay down, sit up, and stand. Up in this write-up, if you're watching this on doggonproblems.com. If you're on YouTube, go to doggonproblems.com. So if you're on my webpage and you don't see a link to basic commands or something that says sit, message me and I'll add it in later. But I've done this with puppies, and so I'll include a video so you can teach him basic commands. Now, he seemed to get sit pretty quickly. He's not a dumb dog, but he's a puppy mill survivor, and so he had a tough upbringing. He was rescued. But basically, the more, just like us, when I graduate, I didn't graduate college, but if I would have graduated college, I would have walked across the stage, my mom would have cried, and we would have had a party and celebrated afterwards, because that's a big accomplishment. If we pass the bar or a medical, whatever it is, we celebrate these achievements in our life, and these achievements are important for us because they actually have a self-esteem boost and a confidence boost. As a puppy mill dog, they just really have a really horrible existence when they're there. And then when we get them in our new home or rescue gets them, we just want to let them do everything they want. We try to make up for what happened to them before. We can't make up for what happened for them before. Now, we want to make sure they understand they're in a safe place. So we do give them an extra allowance and extra credence for their first couple weeks. But if you do that forever, you're going to kind of handicap your dog. It's not healthy for your dog to think that I'm in charge of everything. Actually, in his case, I think it's kind of stressing him out. So what we do instead is, yes, are you struggling a little bit? I'll let you adjust, but you can't have the treats. Oh, I think that's what happened. I had the treat pouch open. I think some treats probably fell out. So he's going to be farting around getting those while I explain the rest. So if you have a dog that's fearful, sometimes having less rules and structure can actually be debilitating to them. The more rules and structure they have, they see, oh, somebody else is acting in the part of a leader. Somebody else is in charge of the cars that are going by the house. Somebody else is in charge of who's at the door or whatever it is. And so it allows them to relax because they don't feel like they're in charge of everything. So I talked about, to start off the session, we talked about ways of exercising him. All the dogs that probably could benefit some exercise. The other 2 dogs go for a walk. He does not because he likes to chase and herd cars. That's why we have the video above of how to use the martingale. That should really help him. And he's also a little bit gamey, so one of the guardians, I told him just to kind of, when the dog jumped up to block the dog from getting on the couch, because that's one of the rules. Well, he has this bag leg, and the guardian's like, well, I don't want to injure his leg. So that would make a change, but normally I would just kind of block the dog once it tried to get back up. Now, some of the rules we went over, and rules are important. He's a marker. The reason dogs mark is because they think that there's no leader here. I'm going to pee on everything so everybody knows there is a dog in charge. Well, the more the guardians enforce rules and boundaries and they add structure through petting with a purpose and passive training, the more he's going to see them acting like a leader and the less he's going to feel like he needs to do the job himself. So some of the rules we went over, not being allowed in the furniture for 30 days or as long as the problem's still going on. And then after that, furniture with an invitation. I'm just doing this now because it looks better with the dog in the shot. Now, if he gets up on the furniture, what I would do is typically touch his nose with the treat and throw it on the ground. When he jumps down and gets it, licks it up, I would say the word off. So I'm putting in context, off means to get off the furniture and get a reward for getting off the furniture. Now, and so at the end of 30 days, it should be invitation only and only for good behavior. So invite him up for good behavior, and then he starts barking, he has to get down. Or if you invite him up, he gets down to get a drink of water. When he comes back, he would need another invitation. Now, whenever I take away the furniture or suggest that as a rule, I always recommend that we have dog beds in the room so the dog has a place that they can go. I showed the guardians how to train the dog to go to the dog bed on command, which we are calling mushroom. Use funny command words impossible. Yes, buddy. Thank you. Not on the lips, though. We're not dating. Keep on practicing that with the mushroom, and do the same thing with other dog beds as well if you put them in different rooms. That way the dog, we can say mushroom and the dog knows where we want it to go. Now, I also like to give my dogs directional commands. I didn't go over this with the guardians in the session, but I'll go over it real because it's super duper simple. Go to each doorway in the house. Like, we want to have him leave the kitchen. That's one of the rules, not allowed to be in the kitchen when we're preparing food. Well, go with him in the kitchen, touch his nose with a treat, and throw it just 2 or 3 feet out of the kitchen without the other dogs around. He's going to run out and get it. When he licks it up, say the word out. Let him come back, and then do it again. I would go around the house, and I would do it at every doorway in the house. Get something salty or something. And so basically keep on doing that. So now, and I would do that with each doorway twice. And then I would do the whole circuit of the house again, but this time I'm throwing into the room instead of out of the room. Out just means to leave the present area. So after you've done that, if you do it with 2 ins and outs of every doorway twice a day for a week, after a while you say out, any room, the dog runs out of the room gleefully. You've created a vocabulary. Frankie is just loving the dog bed, rolling around himself and laying on his side, having a good old time. Okay, so other rules would be the dog has to sit before we let it in or out the door. Remember, tell it to sit, wait 3 seconds. If it doesn't sit, walk away, sit down, give yourself a timer for 1 minute, then go back to the door and tell him to sit again. If he doesn't sit this time, I'll walk away for 2 minutes, next time for 4 minutes, and then for 8 minutes. Now, if I go to tell them to sit and Frankie sits and he doesn't, I would open the door and let Frankie out and not let him out. This way he understands that the only way I can get out the doors is I have to sit politely and ask, may I please go outside the door? Now, if you want to build on that, once you get to the point where they're sitting that, message me. I have a video where I can show you how to teach him to wait. Even though the door is swinging wide open, I have to wait for permission to go out the door, which in his case would probably be very helpful. So message me about that. I'm happy to share that with you later. Another rule would be he's not allowed to be within 7 feet of the humans when they're eating or have a high-value item. Not be allowed in the kitchen when we're preparing food. And I showed the guardians how to use the escalating consequences to move him out of the kitchen. Remember to practice with, at first I would practice without anything. Maybe just drop 1 treat on the floor like I demonstrated for you. But eventually I would do it where you microwave some roast beef or Canadian bacon or regular bacon, leave it on the counter and simulate like you're cooking. That way it looks to him like you're, her garbage down, I'm going to come and get it. And then he does, and you instantly see him because you're not actually cooking. When he sits or lies down, that's when I would put the stuff away and stop pretending and actually do the regular meal. Now, first, when you're walking away from him, walk 1 step back and pause 1 second. Don't ever walk backwards if he's walking forward. That's an implied invitation to come forward. If he's farting around, just stand there waiting in the doorway. As soon as he sits, take that step backward, left foot, right foot, stop, pause for a second. If he stays put, take another step backward. And eventually 2 or 3 or 4 steps back, he's going to try to come in, hiss and rush at him and stop the line. Don't go past the tile. And eventually you're going to go, at first you go back and forth, but eventually he's going to recognize I'm not allowed to go in the kitchen and he will sit or lie down. And that's, again, when you can go ahead and do whatever it is you're doing, do the actual cooking or eat your meal. There's another rule, he shouldn't be around humans who are eating food. And the humans should stop feeding him human food, especially from the table, because that confuses them. Now, you're such a cutie. Yes, you are. Let me see. The dog should eat in a structured fashion. Frankie doesn't live here, he just stays here, and he has a little food aggression. And so what I would do, put all the food in the kitchen, in the 3 corners, put the bowls down, and then the human needs to eat something first, and then I would invite Loki in, because he's the oldest dog. When he gets to eat, the other 2 dogs are not allowed in there. When Loki's done taking his first bite of food, come up with a funny command word that means to eat. Maybe the name of your favorite food or the name of your favorite restaurant. So every time he goes over there, we're going to call it Schwartz's?
Yeah,
Schwartz's, or whatever it is. So we say Schwartz's when he takes his first bite of food. Then when he gets done, he leaves the area, then we bring Frankie in. When Frankie takes his first bite of food, maybe we call his food sushi. And then when Frankie gets, so for 2 months, every time he takes his first bite of food, we say sushi for the first bite only. And after 2 months, when he hears sushi, that means that's my command word to eat. And when he gets done, he leaves, and then we invite this character in. When he comes in, then we say pasta, and that's his word to eat. So come remember, fun command words can really help. I also went over, so those are some examples of rules. Look for ways to delay gratification. I also went over creative ways to exercise the dog. He really liked chasing the laser. I like to get dogs to run up and down stairs, but since he has a gimpy leg and he has fear for the stairs, check with your vet first to make sure the vet's okay. And if the vet's not okay with that, then you can walk him in the backyard like we showed in the video. above. Chasing the laser should be okay, but ask your vet about that. We don't want to make it worse, we make it better. But burning his exercise energy before feeding him or before we take him for a walk in the backyard or outside is a great way to help the dog put it in position to succeed. Now, I also went over, of course, my petting with a purpose and passive training philosophies, which I pretty much go through all my sessions. Petting with a purpose is when the dog initiates contact with you and is demanding attention or nudging for attention or pawing or barking. We're going to not do it, or if we want to pet the dog, we're going to tell the dog to sit. When it sits, pet under the chin, say the word sit, and only the word sit one time. You can pet him as long as you want after that. He just has to do something to change his state to earn that affection. Telling the human what to do is a leadership quality. Asking by sitting is a follower's mindset, which will help with the marking and a lot of the other problems. Once they sit, tell them to sit, pet them under the chin and say sit once. Avoid patting on top of the head. You can pet him anywhere you want, just don't never pat on top of the head. But it's better if you can pet on the chin if all things are equal. So petting with a purpose is if I want to pet him, I'm telling him to sit. If he's already sitting here, I ask him to come and sit here, or he has to lie down. He has to do something to change his state. I would not recommend shake. Now, once after a while, what will happen, he'll start coming in front of you to sit, to prepay for attention. When he does, reach over and make sure you pet him and say the word sit, otherwise he'll go back to jumping or nudging you. Now, I also say paycheck if I suspect someone has forgotten to pet with a purpose. I come in the room, somebody's petting a dog that's standing, I say paycheck, that person has to stop petting, tells him to sit. When he sits, once he knows to sit, then we pet him and say sit, and then we tell the other person, you missed it, I asked him to sit, you just didn't see me do it. And I continue petting him when he stood up, which is allowed, which it is. And I also say recognize or reward or something like that if the dog comes and prepays and I miss it, so somebody can else tell me, hey, you're missing an opportunity to pet him with a purpose. And I pet and say sit. Now, the other one is what I call passive training, which will really help for him because he doesn't know any basic commands. Every time he lays down next to you, pet him and say chill, if that's the word you want to use. Every time he sits, pet him and say sit. Every time he comes to you, pet him and say come. Now, he doesn't like to come. He's kind of a wild man outside. So the guardian, I recommend she put him on a leash when she lets him out. I would also put go out there with him, grab a lawn chair, put it in the middle of the yard when it's a nice fall day now, and have a bunch of treats with you. Let him run around and have a good time. Every time he comes back to you, give him a treat and say come, and then let him go back to playing. The more this happens, the more you're rewarding and building up trust, saying, hey, if you come to the human, you'll get a reward. And after enough repetition, you say come, he is happy to come to you, because that means they don't really get a treat or a reward or attention or something. Now, we have a big fence, and we're on a busy street. He can see the people or the cars passing by, and he barks at them. And he thinks he's making the cars move away by his barking. So what I would do is I would recommend that you do what I call maintenance, which is basically taking a piece of paper, in this case for the fence, maybe some bamboo reed matting, put it on the outside of the fence. So when he goes to the fence, he can't see the cars. I had one guy that did it. He put the bamboo reed matting, but you could still see through it a little bit. So he got like some 2 feet or 3 feet wide thing of construction paper, put that on the side. Then he put the reed matting, and that kind of was enough to block it. So this way the dog doesn't practice going and yelling at the fence. We do the same thing as they have a backyard, and there's a nice 3 windows here that they can look out. The guardian's closing her blinds a lot to prevent the dog from doing that. Well, we miss out on the beautiful fall vistas. So what she could do is get that same 3 feet wide piece of white paper and put it on the bottom of these 3 windows here. So when the dog goes to the window, it can't look out. As a human, I'm standing taller than 3 feet. I can see out as much as I want. So when we take away the temptation and the dog gets out of a habit of going there and yelling at the squirrels or people in the backyard or whatever it is. Let me see, what else am I forgetting? Am I forgetting anything else? I think that's pretty much it. Now, because he's reactive to cars, we might need to do some behavior adjustment training or some counter conditioning to help him stop chasing cars. I'd like you to wait about a month after the session. If you're still having that problem, message me back. We'll set up a follow-up session. We just do this as a 1-hour session. It's a lot cheaper than this session, and we'll specifically working on that. Okay, well, that is the roadmap to success for, let me see if I can get all these names right, Bear and Frankie and Loki. Remember, everything you do trains your dog. Only sometimes you mean it.